Serious, what are some scary, horrifying, creepy things that have happened to you, or in general, that could have a plausible explanation, but still freak you out? I was reading the AskReddit to get inspiration for a short story I wanted to write. Shortly after I started hearing this jingle from my bedroom window in the middle of the night. There was nothing in the backyard or neighbors' houses that could have caused it, not even a wind chime. Then I woke up one morning and my grandpa's painting was upside down. Several days later the knives were all the wrong way in the holder. Then the garbage can was backwards. And that kept going on and on and on. Most of it got explained. Turns out there was an archdiocese really close to our house and the bells in the tower would go off if the wind was just right. And my son knows I like creepy things, so he did most of the turning household items backwards and came clean when I started getting scared instead of just having fun with it. Only thing that has no explanation is my grandpa's painting. My reaction with the painting is what made my son decide to run with it, but he did not turn it upside down. A couple of weeks ago, I was laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and I hear my TV come on. I lay in bed a few seconds hoping to hear my fat ass cat jump off the coffee table. I get up and go out to the living room, and said fat ass cat is posted up on a table by the window and nowhere near the TV remote. The way my house is set up, my bedroom is behind the living room and my living room TV is perpendicular to the wall, not parallel. So I walk up to the back of the TV and, right when I get next to it, it shuts off. Glow of the screen disappears, sound stops. I'm 100% freaked the fuck out, so I unplug it. I go lay back down in bed. My heart is still going thump thump thump, and I'm trying my best to pretend everything is a-okay. So I lay there a few more minutes, and then I hear more goddamn noise from the living room. I'm so freaked out. I get my stun baton out to go check out the new noise, because I might be able to taste a poltergeist. I poke my head into the living room. The TV definitely isn't on. I listen for a few seconds and realize this noise is coming from my laptop. The laptop I haven't opened in probably 2 weeks. I lift the lid on it and uTorrent has decided to open itself and start running pop-up ads. I mute the laptop, go back to bed, and lay in bed awake until 4 AM. In the morning I'm texting my boyfriend about it. He does so googling. Turns out almost dead TV remote batteries can send garbage signals that the TV will interpret as the on signal. I've had my TV since 2011 and the remote still has Vizio branded batteries. I still don't have a good explanation for the laptop. In 2 cases, my wife and I had dinner at a restaurant that then burned down that same night. One was a pizzeria that was next to a sport hall, indoor tennis courts. We had dinner there, then read the next morning that the whole building was destroyed. A couple of years later, we were on vacation in Namibia and went with the whole tour group for dinner to Joe's Beer House in Swakopmund. The next morning, our tour guide told us that the place burned to the ground after we left that night. Fortunately, this has only happened twice, but it is still kinda spooky. I once saw a will-o'-the-wisp. It scared me shitless. For those who don't know, it's a light seen at night in desolate areas of the countryside, hovering in the distance like a ghostly lantern. It's one of the most widespread legends in the world, having many different versions in a variety of cultures, and it's believed to be a ghost or a demon. Scientifically speaking, the most plausible explanation regards to the decomposition of certain chemicals in a corpse, often cattle, which creates phosphoric acid, which can create a light. However, when you're in the middle of nowhere in the dead of night, fight or flight gives very few fucks about science. When I was about 14 I started sleeping on the floor in my room. It helped with my back pains. I finished watching a movie on my laptop, and for some reason I was looking at the light coming from the gap under the door to my bathroom. Then I saw 2 shadows pass, like 2 slow footsteps. There was no one in there. It scared the living shit out of me. I started crying. I got up to check the bathroom, but it was empty aside from a few beetles that had gotten through the hole in the fly screen. In all honesty, that's probably what it was, just some bugs over a light. Had me sleeping in my sister's bed for a month. When I was like 4 or 5, I remember waking up one day in the early hours of the morning. It was still dark outside, and I groggily made my way to my parents' room, expecting them to still be asleep. When I opened the door, the room was fully lit, my parents were nowhere in sight, and there was a man and a woman I don't recognize on the bed. The following events are pretty hazy in my memory, but basically they seemed surprised, and one of them asked something along the lines of "who's he?" to the other. Still too sleepy and young to process anything, I just closed the door, went back to my room, and fell asleep again. When I woke up in the morning, my parents were there, and the day continued as normal. I've never seen those two people again, and until now I'm still wondering if I had a supernatural encounter, or if it's just a really vivid dream I had as a child. About 4 years ago we heard my grandmother fell and hit her head, and she wasn't going to make it. We drove 4 hours south to get to see her one last time. My mom was distraught. She was riding back with some other family. My sister had to drive us home. We were pulled off on the side of the road. I can't remember what we were doing over there, but we were waiting for cars to pass so we could hang a U-turn. I turn around and look and see a car approaching. My sister then says, "I'm going to hit this car." I thought she was messing around or something. Then as the car starts to pass us, my sister hits the gas and swerves into it. Amazingly, we didn't actually hit it. That other driver had insane reflexes and swerved around us, didn't even honk or stop. My sister instantly started to freak out and said she didn't see it. I was confused. I told her what she told me, but she had no memory of saying that. She then burst into tears saying she didn't see it, and she didn't say that, but my brother in the backseat confirms we both heard her say it. To this day we don't know what happened. She still claims she didn't say that or see the car. My dad and I were talking about my grandfather one weekend. My dad lived with his parents at the time as money was very tight. My grandfather was in the hospital for pneumonia and heart problems, which he was no stranger to, as he had survived a few heart attacks at this point, due to a mix of diabetes, prescription meds, and heavy drinking. We both heard what sounded like coughing come from where his room is. This was somewhat late and my dad, my sister Zed and I were the only people there. My dad and I were creeped out the day the least. I joked that my grandfather had died and he was haunting the house. Not a minute later, the hospital calls. My grandfather hadn't died. In fact, he was being difficult with the nurses and he wanted to call to talk to my grandmother about something. I don't actually know what caused the coughing sound, other than us just hearing things, but the fact that the hospital called so soon after I said he died was the creepiest part. Was taking a piss one time, standing up so my back is facing the door, when I hear this loud, human sounding, hissing straight on my ear. Needless to say, I booked it out of there as fast as possible. Looking back, I guess it must have been pipes. I mean, what else could it have been? Similar story, this one happened recently, actually. So I was watching Black Mirror in my room with headphones on and the lights off in the middle of the night, when suddenly I hear this very loud clap straight in my right ear. I immediately jumped up out of my chair, thinking it was my mom fucking with me cause I had my headphones in, but nobody was there. I was just alone in the dark. I even went upstairs to ask my mom if she heard anything, and she said no. Also, it didn't come from the episode. When I eventually sat down to keep watching, after calming myself down, I rewound the show to well before I heard the noise. Nothing. My best friend and I lived together in a 2-bedroom apartment my senior year of college. We only had one key to our unit's mailbox, so we always left it on a little table right by the front door. A few months into living there, the key went missing. My roomie swears she remembers seeing the key on the table that day. Before leaving the house, she had an important piece of mail coming later that day that she wanted to make sure she got, but when she came back from class, it was missing. We looked around the house for a few days, realized it wasn't turning up, and asked our landlord for a new key. We were confused about how it could just disappear, but just accepted that one of us had probably misplaced it or accidentally taken it out of the apartment. A few weeks after losing the first key, we had a friend over for brunch, and she was putting some cinnamon rolls in the oven. All of a sudden she asks, "Why is there a key in your oven?" Balanced perfectly across 2 wires on the middle oven rack, in the center of the rack, was our rolled mail key. There is no way it could have fallen into this position. It had to be placed carefully there by someone. We had just made a frozen pizza on the same rack the night before, and it hadn't been there, and we hadn't left the apartment between making the pizza the night before and making the cinnamon rolls the next morning. I still can't think of a plausible explanation to that one, except that my roommate was just fucking with me, but seeing her face that day, I know she wasn't.